Welcome to Agile to Agility podcast with Miljan Bajic.
Major show alert!
The very first value we wrote is individuals and interactions.
Let's take this to another level.
As long as you're there, you have a very indirect impact, but it can be a really huge impact, but people will not necessarily notice it or attribute it to you. So think about that when thinking about Scrum Master and relationships.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And Gunther, thank you for taking the time. I really enjoyed my interview with you. So I thought I've started doing these Ask Me Anything sessions where other people, I create a platform for other people to ask you and other thought leaders questions. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's afternoon.
My pleasure. Yeah, around 6 p.m. here, so that's quite feasible. It's not middle of the night, you know. And I think what was really enjoyable that when we had that conversation, Miljan, it wasn't really. It didn't feel to me like an interview.
Yeah.
Just like we had a conversation. So maybe it's good. Maybe we can have conversations with more people now. Yeah, cool.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, what I like about this, it's not a huge group, so maybe we can have like you said, the conversation. So maybe let's start with the first question here with 3 votes. What are your favorite Agile empirical metrics?
Long story. You're okay with longer stories, right? So I'm very old, so you can see by my beard and the gray hair. So I often look back at things that I went through in the past. I remember a long time ago, back in 2013, at the point I was joining Scrum.org to partner with Ken at Scrum.org. I was working at a large consulting company. And working with large customers, and obviously they always want to know, assessments and things, and I don't know, audits and whatever, and organization want to judge their teams, are they doing well, not productivity things and so on. So I started out by creating something that also in my sort of traditional mind, I create something like a sort of Scrum assessment, Scrum evaluation. I felt like assessment was a bit neutral, and then I discovered that in no time people were abusing it. That was one thing. So I started calling it a Scrum improvement model, to give people a hint that if you want to measure whatever it is, you want to use it as information, not as a target. So that's very important for me in terms of metrics or measurements, whatever you want to measure, see it as an indication, an indication of a situation, not as a target, because a lot of companies turn metrics and confuse those things, like, KPIs, key performance indicators. So I changed sort of some of the naming towards helping people see that whatever I was offering them was a way to assess themselves in order to at least identify potential improvements. So that's maybe a connection also between the question empiricism or empirical way of working and metrics. So metrics should give an indication. And then what you do with it is different. And then when I joined Scrum.org, after I think the first things back in 2013 and part of 2014 that Ken and I worked on was working on what turned then Nexus, or Scale Professional Scrum. That was afterwards. No, we first started working on this thing, building on this way that we want to help people and organizations and teams assess themselves in a way. And it ended up in something that we created by then, and maybe Miljan knows, it ended up in what we called Agility Path. And what was so important about Agility Path, that we wanted to help people see that Scrum is not the goal. Scrum, and I still call that Scrum, cannot be the goal of Scrum. You have to do Scrum for some reason. In that sense, Scrum should be a tool, a mean to help organizations increase their ability to deliver what we call value. So in Agility Path, we built up this thing. So we elaborated on this improvement tool that I had and made it less about Scrum and more about the ability to deliver value. So helping people think in terms of what is our ability to deliver value? Are we actually delivering value? Yes, no. And the great thing about it, because value, very common term that you use certainly in agile environments. And ping, I've got the three terms now: agile, empirical, and metrics. And wanted to help people see that Scrum is not the goal of Scrum. Think in terms of value, and then it brings up the question: what is value? And that's good because it makes people think. What would you consider value? And I still present them in those terms even today. And then I wrote a paper about it, and I think I called it Empirical Management Explored, or what I called management in an empirical environment. Because like in the question, Scrum is about empiricism, inspection, adaptation. We do inspection adaptation because of the unpredictability of our environments. So, and it might be helpful to create metrics for that. So, and then we thought about, okay, so you need to think about what is currently the value that I'm currently delivering or creating. And then think about value. For most organizations, that would always be something with money, probably. Benefits, profits, financial, a financial return for the organization in Scrum, and then the organization as represented by its stakeholders. So something probably for the organization value. Something also value for consumers or customers, because in Scrum, that was also one of the questions. So Scrum is a product development or a product management framework. So it's all about product. So what is the value that your product brings to the organization? What is the value, at least, that your product brings to its consumers? People consume a product, they either buy it or they use it, have to use its functionality. And then next to that was also very important for us is that, value for the organization, meaning the people funding the development, the people consuming the result, but also people doing the work. So in that sense, also value for the teams doing the work. So you might call that engagement or their commitment or their energy, their inspiration, intrinsic motivation, and so on. So those are the things that we talked about. And that was capturing metrics or identifying metrics for that. There's tons of that suitable to your context. So we wanted to bring out sort of a principle and then give examples. I still call them samples of metrics, like customer satisfaction, NPS, Net Promoter Scores, financial returns, and so on, market share, usage, market position. In a sort of more negative way, might be cost cutting, cost reduction for the company, but also team engagement. So value in three areas: organization, teams, and consumers. Very important because introducing Scrum should increase the value for your consumers, increase customer satisfaction. Introducing Scrum should increase the return in a way for the organization, but also it should increase the engagement of people, inspiring people, what I call humanizing the workplace. So those go hand in hand, because what is the point of having a high return and even satisfied customers if your teams or your highly skilled people leave all the time, are unhappy, run into burnout situations, depressions, and so on? It doesn't make sense. Those three should go together.
Yeah. So what I'm
So
hearing
in terms
is
of
really like taking first of all, I think what you said is being cautious about what you measure, because what you measure is gonna influence the behavior, but also taking more holistic view to some of this. Maybe let's hear it from others. I know, I don't know if Andrew, Tom, or Joe, Jose, and Charles, I see you guys. Any thoughts on this question? Because I think this is a big one in a sense, like, we in Agile, we tend to measure a lot of things, but we don't have these conversations about what should we be measuring? Like, how are we gonna know if we're on the right track and what is the track that we're on? So any thoughts, any comments from some of you or anybody here? Jose, you might be double muted.
We see you talking, but we can't hear you.
We still can't hear you.
But in the meantime, let me add, as Jose, you try to figure out what's happening. What in a way is underlying is very important. It's in a way metrics about outcome, impact that you have, not output. It's also what I wrote in a paper: value, not volume. Because in the old way of thinking, so it's sort of the industrial mindset, it's about producing a lot and more and more and more. In my view, it's about value in that sense, producing the right things. It might be that much, but if you produce the right things, so the outcome of your output, you have to create output, obviously, but then I think what is most valuable is to measure the outcome of your output.
Yeah. Is it better?
Yeah.
No? Yes? Okay. So here we try to use evidence-based management to bring outcome metrics, but it's very hard because outcomes are hard to measure. And so for now, we measure user satisfaction, client satisfaction, and also on some teams, the collaborator satisfaction. Are they happy to work there? Have they good morale, or anything that becomes an impediment for them? And let's talk about it in the next retrospective.
Yeah, cool. So team morale or engagement or yeah, cool, great. Yeah. And by the way, what I was talking about, agility path, then Jose evolved into evidence-based management, by the way, EBM. So it was actually only a subset of what agility path was, by the way. Yeah,
Right.
Cool. And what is also important, and even Jose, you said it, value can often not be reduced to only one thing. It is not just customer satisfaction, it's not just maybe team morale, it's not just financial aspects, it's always sort of a combination. And obviously it might change over the life cycle of a product. So in the beginning, maybe money is not that important, but learning feedback from the market, appreciation, and so on. Over time, as your products mature and let's say grow up, then money might be more important. And at some point in time, it might be like really revenues. In other times, it might be market share. So also be a little bit dynamic about it. Also, in the sense of metrics, it's not, be careful to not just have one data point. Even if you have multiple metrics, at least teams, consumers, and organization, capture metrics regularly, because in an unpredictable, whatever complex world, it's often about also trend lines and evolutions. So you want to have multiple measurements so that you get overly focused on just one data set, let's say. You want to see evolutions, because you also want to take into account, Jose, in a way what you said, it's difficult, because sometimes there might be some sort of lagging time. It might be some time before you see the effect of what you've done. So that is also a reason to be even more cautious.
One of the questions I was going to bring up is the potential long-term impacts on the global community, right? The short-term indicators could point that an organization is doing all things correct and positive. We make money as a company, our employees are happy, our consumers are happy. But when you take a look at like an oil company, right, the devastating impacts that if they are wildly successful in producing lots of oil and consumption is high, what impact does that have in the long term on the global community? In the environment, the atmosphere, etc. So, it brings an interesting dynamic to think about that as a company scales and grows and satisfies its needs and its customers' needs, and is that ultimately causing harm or good to the overall, world?
Yeah. Well, brilliant to bring that up, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. So beyond those sort of core things, what brings a product to the organization, the team's building it. So also at a sort of level up, let's say next level up, to society in a way, because it might raise awareness within the organization, from the organization. What are we doing to society at a large scale? Yeah, cool, great. And that might be value too. So assessing your actions by what are you doing to society, to the environment, like you said. Yeah, cool. So that raises a lot of things. So think about, how would you define value? How do you see value? Yeah.
But it goes back to that, just reminds me of like, what's the vision? Like, what Andrew is saying is like, if the goal of the company is to make money and to be very competitive at whatever costs, without, let's just say, being socially or not factoring the more holistic way of looking at the society, then it can be perceived as very successful by just the financial aspects of it. But that's something that is embedded in the company's culture and values. So coming back to the metrics, I guess they have to align, like it or not, they have to align whatever the vision is. But hopefully that vision is inclusive of things that are bigger than the organization itself, not just what's best for me. Kind of.
But it's like you say, which is you're already down, because hopefully it is. Yeah, and that brings up a thing that, so a while ago I talked about things that I called the ripple effect of being clueless.
Yeah.
So why do you exist as an organization? What's your purpose? Why do you even exist? What is your purpose? And like you said, Miljan, making money, okay, that is a purpose. It sounds like a pretty poor reason to exist for me, honestly. I hope that you would be doing other things, and that making money is important, but almost a side effect or something also.
The means to achieve the purpose, right? I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and we all need money. I need to feed my family too, and organization need money too. But if that's the only thing, and as we know also from Daniel Pink, right, it becomes a very toxic thing. It's not like a really engaging purpose, making money. You spread it out across the company or across your staff, and you all get like blindfolded. It's all about money, and it's going to invoke very unethical behaviors.
So this goes also, and let's move on to, because I think we could dive deeper into this, but like this is also tied to the type of leadership and their ego and type of things that drives them. But let's for the sake of covering some of these and time boxing some of these, let's move on to the next question, and if we have time we can come back to this one. The next question here is, what are your no, this got moved up. What's your approach when you're working on big product at scale and needs to be divided on multiple sub-products? So approach to subdividing products into sub-products, I guess.
Yeah, and it sort of brings us into the realm, let's say, of scale. Well, I like to say with most organizations that I've worked with, and pretty large organizations also, so in the banking, the financial world, insurance companies, and so on. It's funny how we often like to compare ourselves to the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Apples of this world. Yeah. I don't know, in my world, at least here in Europe, I don't know a lot of companies that have sort of the reach and the scale of those companies. Meaning they also don't have products that have to be built and developed like the Facebooks and the Amazons and so on do. People, it seems like a lot of organizations like to think that of themselves, but it's more like some sort of, I don't know, elusive ambition also that they have in order to present themselves as a really huge company. So I've once worked a few years ago with a large airline company here in Europe, one of the biggest, also a world player. And there, at some point in time, they had a really big platform that had to be redeveloped. Rather than tweaking, changing, tuning the existing thing that they had, they wanted to recreate the platform completely. It was pretty big. So we ended up with building that platform with 4 teams, so 4 Scrum teams with people in 3 locations across Europe. And it was very hands-on. In that sense, it was still just Scrum. So we didn't put in any scaling frameworks and so on. So I helped them think about the product backlog and the skills and the expertise needed to create a platform. They thought about having 4 teams and then working with people to make sure that people understood that it's probably really good to have 4 teams that would be able to operate as independent as possible. That's another thing with large things scale. A lot of companies seem to be comparing themselves also. They love to compare themselves to Spotify. And then they forget that in a lot of organizations, you might try to create independent teams or autonomous teams, but often they are not really independent, because at the technical layer, at an architectural layer, they have to use systems and so on that are mixed and intertangled and so on anyhow. So I always like to think in terms of Scrum teams as autonomous as possible, but let them have some sort of, there is probably, maybe even if it's only at a technical level, there are probably always cross-team dependencies. So don't hide yourself from that. Don't ignore them. Don't pretend as if they're not there, because you will end up in problems. That's one thing. And that other thing that we worked on when Ken and I worked together at Scrum Talk was that Nexus, Scaled Professional Scrum, is you can do so much with just one Scrum team that is empowered, that has the tools, authorizations, access to systems, and so on. So I still remember my first years of working with Agile and Scrum, a long time ago, was in 2003. And it was a great experience, because in a way my life of Scrum didn't start with Scrum. It started by then with extreme programming. So we did all of the beautiful extreme programming practice, meaning paired programming, test-driven development, refactoring, collective code ownership. And we did continuous integration multiple times a day. At least a couple of times a day, so that we have short feedback loops, and we did performance testing and so on overnight, so every night. That means in sort of a time span of 24 hours, we did so much. And it is amazing how much work you can get done with one team that have all those practices in place, that has all those tools and systems in place. It is plainly amazing what you can do in 3 weeks' time. So that is also something a lot of organizations want to scale, but they're scaling a mess. They're scaling teams that don't have those things, that are not even. So the message is try to create actually truly releasable increments, versions of your product every sprint. And once you can do that, I know a lot of organizations that wouldn't feel the need to scale anymore. Because scaling, meaning working with multiple teams, where those teams are not able individually, let alone as a combined ecosystem, but even individual to produce an actually releasable increment, a version of the product or the sub-product, like the question asked, that you can put into production without any open, unfinished work. That is truly amazing. And I would doubt that you need. The problem is that people think in terms of scale with a lot of teams and a lot of people, but that's certainly not the same. But it also goes back to the discussion of when starting with Scrum, what I've seen with a lot of large organizations, so they have a lot of teams in place, and they think that is scale. But scale is not how many teams you have in place. Scale means how many teams does it take for you to manage a product. One of the questions was about multiple teams or multiple products. Yeah, go ahead.
You think also like how you define the product could factor in. This is with the assumption that you know what you're doing, how you define products, sub-products, and then also like a lot of times companies have a hard time trimming. Like they want to still offer all of these things and not making decisions about, okay, which products, sub-products do we want to keep and which ones do we strategically need to move away from, because we can't just do everything, you know. So that lack of focus and lack of definition of what product or sub-product is.
Yeah, I like to go back to that beautiful statement of the Agile Manifesto, maximizing the work not done. Yeah. That doesn't just apply to a product, meaning maximize the feature you will not do and so on, and focus, because focus is a positive expression of that. Maximizing the work not done, that means focus. But focus means knowing what you're doing, and it's a really good idea to explicitly think, what are we then not going to do? That's a good thought. But the same applies, like you said, Miljan, at the portfolio level. Maximizing the work not done, maximizing the products that you're not investing in anymore, or not right now, or maybe later on. So, and I assume everyone knows this. Yeah, let's turn, or like the lack of courage to terminate the product, take it out of the market again. Yeah, but there's still 3 people using it. Okay, and how complex does it make your landscape? How complex does it make your portfolio? How complex does it make even also the technical systems that are involved? How difficult does that make it to add something useful, valuable to another product? So yeah, those things, yeah, absolutely. So a lot of companies, from as far as I'm concerned, don't really get the idea of scale because they don't know what is their product, and their Scrum teams are certainly not optimally organized to serve a product, rather than be all over the place and have to do too many things anyhow.
And another thing, maybe just to add to this too, is that a lot of times, even if you are trying to scale down or divide things into sub-products, people don't even have current data, like of where the bottlenecks are in the current, with the current delivery. Like, why are we trying to divide? It's just, for the sake of, hey, this is too big, we need to start separating it out. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on this idea of taking a big product and dividing into some products and organizing. I mean, this is really a descaling question, I guess, more than a scaling question. Any thoughts? Somebody has their map, Maru, yeah.
Just turning on the camera. Quite some thoughts actually. Just one main one is that there is no general strategy. Will not surprise anybody in my experience. And the other one is I did a training with Alistair Coburn on Heart of Agile, and we spent a lot of time doing work slicing in general. They can also apply to team organizing teams around pieces of work, and also organizing work around a product, etc. And usually that entailed a lot of tactics and highly contextualized one. So concretely, in my experience, no general solution.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it has to be contextualized, and I think that's one of the challenges. Everybody's looking for, like, what should we do here? And every company is different, and like strategy of what you need to do today versus 2 years from now is different. So, but there are some common patterns in the sense of looking at those and saying, okay, how do we apply them?
Yeah. But for me, it often starts with, we already said, knowing your product. A lot of organizations set up Scrum teams, often in silos and departments and so on, and then not thinking about what is the product, because you might have multiple teams in different departments, different silos, that are actually working on the same product. Yeah. But you still have the handovers and so on. And then, what about thinking about what's the product? Yeah.
Well, the other thing is not even what is the product, but like I really like to look at it from like jobs to be done or the problem standpoint and saying like what problems is the product solving, and if we're dividing into sub products, what who are the customers and what problems is it solving to them? Does it mean that does it make sense to separate it? I think if we start with the problem and saying what problem does it solve and for who, that's a good starting point. Yeah.
But in a way, those two, by the way, Miljan, that's absolutely true, are for me really connected, because in a way, there's some people saying, yeah, there are lots of things of product. You can call a component of product, you can call it a product or a module. But for me, indeed, product is about delivering end-to-end value to consumers. Mm-hmm. And that is important. So knowing sort of the boundaries of the product, but also are we able to produce end-to-end value to a consumer? And then updating a certain component or a product, or often a layer or whatever, is not enough. So then the question is how to organize your Scrum so that you're actually, in that sense, solving a consumer's problem with your product by thinking in terms of end-to-end or start to finish. Yeah.
Great. Okay, we got a question that rose up here to the top with regarding the UX, I believe. So the Scrum guy says to start a sprint with a goal and a plan for the first few days. How does UX fit into Scrum? Is it possible to have continuous incremental design? How much upfront sprint ahead design is allowed as part of the product backlog refinement and stakeholder interaction?
None. No, and I really, it's probably from my naive years of Scrum, can I say that? Let me really go back to my very first experience in that, and it was 2006. So from 2003 until 2005, and even up to 2006, worked with sort of largely the same team, sort of core team. And in 2006, we had doing a lot of great development. And in 2006, we run into two big challenges, two very different types of things. One was an e-com product that needed to be made. Another one was something for a Belgian government. And both were very, very UX driven, GUI driven, all about usability, great colors, nicely designed, and so on. So it was a lot of also usability stuff in that. Now, maybe we were lucky, maybe it was because we didn't have enough time. So we just built on what we had been doing before that. We invited some UX people, really great people, to join us as a team. Maybe it's because we didn't have time. We didn't have time to waste at all. So we started working. And it was only afterwards when it sort of got through my head that, oh my God, we are so beautiful. So we had in Scrum, we now call them developers, or then we call it development team. So we added in a way UX skills to that. So those people in a sprint, so we selected things that we were going to do in the sprint from an end user perspective, features, functionalities, or whatever. And then in the same sprint, so we had UX people designing them, wireframes, thinking about color schemes and so on. We had other people, let's say, quickly building on that in the same sprint, filling that up, let's say, with code, running into stuff that hadn't been foreseen. So developers quickly adding that, throwing it back to the UX designer, whatever, then they expanded on all of the technical stuff. I'm an expert, by the way, elaborating on the wireframes and so on. It was all happening within the sprint. And still by the end of the sprint, we had something that was maybe not complete, but at least nicely designed, technically workable, usable, and so on. So, and we did that for two big development efforts in 2006, and it worked out really fine. And it's maybe because we didn't think about it too much. So I have seen it working without any, oh yeah, the first sprint needs to be about this, so that in the sprint after we can start developing it or coding it and so on. You can do that in the same sprint. Think in terms of very short feedback loops within a sprint. So I've seen it working. Since then, I stick to my belief. You don't have that. It's thinking in terms of what skills and expertise we need in the team as developers. Consider them all developers, and keep the challenge of, what, by the end of the sprint, back in those days, we worked in sprints of 1 month, by the way, 4 weeks. By the end of the sprint, we need to have something that we can show to our user, because we also invited key users, not stakeholder, the actual customer. That was amazing. And I can assure you that in both of those projects, we had very, very deep discussions with the customers, with the people that were funding us, about colors and color schemes and what types of colors and designs. One was for the Belgian government, and that included, by the way, the Belgian National Police Department. They had like really, really high expectations with regards to the use of their logos and the exactness of the colors and so on. We had deep discussions, and all as part of our sprints, almost ongoing.
I think the key there, I have mixed, like I've worked, like, especially in the government, like this is, and I think it in a sense, like depends on the maturity of the teams. But I think the key thing that you said there is the collaboration and communication that happens. Like when I've seen it work, when UX goes ahead and it's looking at things, it's really to help facilitate conversation within the developers, right? Some people are more visual. So like sometimes this was with maybe in 2011, 2012 with the state of Idaho, essentially in the United States, when US government gave these like, $20 million grants to states to create these state-based exchanges. So each state could have a platform to sell insurance. State, at least here in the United States, very slow with moving things. So it took a little bit longer. And in that instance, it helped like UX designers to work with the product owner to design these forms and to communicate with the customers, as a lot of people were, wanting some visual things to see. So in that instance, it worked. In some instances, like you, Gunther, you're saying, you don't have to. It's about communication and how are we getting on the same page and building that shared understanding. So I think it's just what's the purpose, right? If you're using UX to kind of plan and go ahead without getting people on the same page, that's an issue. If it's about getting people to build a shared understanding, I think, in my opinion, that's okay. Whatever you're doing to get people on the same page and have a shared understanding while they're delivering, so that's my maybe 2 cents on it. I've seen it work both ways.
Cool.
Anything
that anybody wants to add to that, or the person that asked the question, also feel free to jump in.
I shared on the question a quick video for Nordstrom Lab. I think it resumes well how to fit UX design in a Scrum team. It's from a class with Chris Lucansen on UX and Scrum with UX design. And I think it's short video of 6 minutes.
You're talking about the same video from Nordstrom Lab, that's where they're also just going and prototyping things for a week to just learn about what the customer wants rather than
this one. Yes.
Yeah, great. Let's see, what else do we have here? We answered that one. What approach? So this one here with the 3 votes, also changing an agile mindset is often used in the industry as one of the toughest things to achieve. I sometimes believe that mental associations from past experiences have an impact on how people are or can adopt to an agile mindset. It will be interesting to know your thoughts on the same. So
there's 2 things. For me, practices, doing stuff, and then mindset go hand in hand. You can't separate them. Sort of like the sort of thing about separating doing versus being. I don't see that. Doing and being go in a way hand in hand. So in that sense, to acquire. So let's talk about that agile mindset. Mindset is about. For me, it's about being open for change, understanding that things can't be perfectly predicted. It's about complexity, know that there's a lot of things that will play a role that we don't know of, that we can plan up front and so on. So that sort of openness. We haven't really inspired people to sort of take that stance or that attitude towards their work in the past, right? We forced them to make plans and designs and blueprints and so on, sign things off and so on. So, and that might be what the question is about, thinking about previous or past experiences on how that has changed your mindset. So for me, that's in a way where Scrum and Agile connect or relate to each other. The practices of Scrum or the process of Scrum, if you want, so the events of Scrum are all about inspection adaptation, which is a definition of what it means to be Agile. So applying Scrum will help you get the mindset behind it, which is the Agile mindset. So practice and principles practices and mindset go hand in hand. You can't just change people's mindset. You can't plug in a USB cable and download a new mindset into people's mind. That's not how it works. And then often, even if you try to do Scrum and invite them almost to be agile, to be open, to think about options and possibilities rather than predicted stuff. Even then, it might take a while just because of the past experiences. That's also where I often see management jumping in way too quickly. So we've now done 3 sprints, all this self-organization stuff. You see, our people are not capable of it because it's not happening. No, because you've denied them to do that, to apply their natural ability to be agile for years and years and years. It's going to take a while before people step up again, stand up again, put their head across the table again and start actually doing stuff, exploring, experimenting, failing, getting back up, learning, and so on, because we've denied people to do that for years and years and years.
So it's really about what you're saying is creating environment for the new experiences to form, rather than just telling people change the mindset. And I see this, we talk, at least I talk a lot about, changing the organizational structure, changing the policies to enable, like, do you have a environment where people are, it's safe to fail, right? Do you have environment where people embrace uncertainty? Like, you can't, tell people to have an agile mindset and you say like, okay, we're going to fix the scope, we're going to do this, and we're going to try to pretend like there's certainty when there's no certainty. Like, and again, I think if leadership sets the environment correctly, then the mindset is the result of the new experiences. I can't just say, hey, you have to change how you think. Nobody, I had to change how I think when I came to the United States. I had to change, but it was a systemic change that I was part of a different system. And I either had to adjust to that system or,
But like you said, also at sort of the management or the leadership level, I said that word. It's also, again, practices and mindsets. In that sense, practices also embracing, accepting that this is Scrum. That means that at least throughout the sprint, we leave people alone. We allow them to focus, and we go to the sprint review as invited to share our views, opinions, give feedback, and so on, and hopefully in a constructive way. So in that way, it's sort of managing from the outset. It's not about breathing down people's neck, checking out estimates and tasks and individual performance and so on. And like you said, Miljan, that will have an impact on a lot of processes, governance, procedures within the organization. Not alone, but certainly starting with a lot of what we call HR, human resources. We have HR processes in place that invoke individual superhero behavior. We have processes in place that invite people to contribute to a team, accepting and acknowledging that individual performance cannot always be measured at the individual level anymore. You're part of a team or part of a bigger thing. So we often provide people the wrong motivators. And then obviously they show the behavior that is not the most helpful behavior in terms of Scrum, iterative incremental development, working as a team, working with multiple disciplines and diversity and so on.
Well, also, I think it's not like different people are motivated differently. So it's almost like, also providing one size fits all as far as motivational factors. We have about 10 minutes left, and all of these other questions are 2 votes or less. So what we're going to do here, Gunther, is you're going to answer them quickly. So this is almost like the speed. Last 10 minutes is just your quick thoughts on these. So the first one here is...
you just think I talk too much, right?
No, I did this. I don't know who I did this with. Maybe Daniel Mezic, like where it was fun. It was fun. It's just your quick thoughts on these questions versus the other ones. So
go.
What are the best training opportunities for more experienced Agilists?
I think how I like to see my classes, at least, is they are as advanced or as beginners as you want or as I can make them. So I don't know what advanced means. I call myself an eternal novice. I'm still new at this. I learn from people. I like the value in that sense of Scrum of openness a lot. Yeah. Don't think too quickly that you're too good for something and that you already know. I know I've got plenty of people that think that I teach just PSM, PSPO. They're being perceived more and more as basic foundational things or simple things, whatever. They are not, by the way. And I know so many people that think that they're too good that they're doing my classes. So, yeah.
I agree. Next one here. Why is it so difficult for organizations to connect day-to-day activities / decisions to bottom line results such as profitability and market share?
I don't really know. The only big problem I see with most organizations that in my book I called it the industrial paradigm. A lot of organizations were established during let's say the industrial times the way that we organize, the way that you look at people, the way that we organize our organizations is still, I think, based on that industrial mindset, where it's about large-scale production, manufacturing, stupid workers, and so on. Now, we are living in the information age, the knowledge age, and a lot of organizations still are struggling with that transition, going from industrial way of thinking about how to organize working people towards accepting that it's all about knowledge and information these days.
Well, that too, and I think most organizations, which is related to what you're saying here, is our structures, a matrix type of structures or functional structures. They're not with a lot of silos. They're not organized by end-to-end value streams or products. So that will create that. Okay, next one. Is there any impact on mental associations based on our belief systems, which impact agile mindset in teams? This is a deep question. Of course there is. There always is.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. And just by accident, I'm reading on that stuff a little bit currently on new social psychology research and so on, thinking about the nature of us as human beings. Well, this common belief that a lot of people seem to be telling us that by nature, our natural side is evil, is dark, is egocentric, is egoistic, that we like to grab things. And that is totally not true. But we've been ingrained with that thinking. The only reason why the human species is dominating the planet is not because we're intelligent, because other human species were more intelligent, like even the Neanderthal. We are not the strongest, but we form groups, we collaborate. So collaborating, flexibility, agility is actually in our human nature. But we're being manipulated into thinking that we are evil, that we are bad, that we need to be controlled. And I believe the agile mindset is going to help us liberate ourselves from that, at least at a small scale level. Teams, organizations, maybe departments, products, and so on. Not society, it's too big for that. But our societies and our organizations are based on hierarchy, based on the assumption that we are dumb creatures, evil, that need to be controlled, we have to be liberated.
No, I agree. And like, if you really like, I would say like Michael Spade and Michael Hammond, I just spoke to him today too for an interview. Check out his book about agility. He talks about the mindset and he dives into breaking down as far as like, the belief systems and what you're saying here. So check it out. Whoever put that question, well, I think it's for anybody. If you haven't seen this book, check it out. It's a really good on this question of mindset and culture, and
But my core conviction is that every single human being is naturally agile, able to adapt and to change, and is naturally wired to collaborate, because that's how we grow into, which might have its negative side effects, into dominating the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. We got maybe time for a couple more. What are some of the best ways for dependency management? I think this comes up, this is a good question. How do you manage dependencies? What have you seen?
Well, it's funny because I'm working on a new workshop. I want to launch it. It's called Scrum in the Large. And it will start by thinking about dependencies. And I hope people will see that the only really good way to deal with dependencies is not to manage them, because manage them means keeping them in place, but to look for ways to remove them with independent teams, autonomous teams, automating stuff, whatever, disentangling stuff, and so on. So how to manage dependencies? First of all, in Scrum, you make them visible via your product backlog often, because product backlog holds functional dependencies. Inner team dependencies are managed by the teams themselves in a sprint with the expectation to produce something releasable by the end of the sprint. Cross-team dependencies by communication, conversation, alignment across teams, but against the ambition to try to get rid of dependencies. So I've seen crazy pictures of companies where you had like a wall full of features and so on, and then with all those strings connected to things to show dependencies. And I'm like, wow, this is so complex. So the ultimate challenge, remove a dependency. Don't manage it, remove it. Get it out, get it away.
Great. There's one more with 2 votes and everything else there's with 1. So last question for today, how to have successful relationships with Scrum Masters? I don't know if like from whose perspective, but
yeah. Well, I still, and I'll keep, regardless of the changes in the latest Scrum Guide, I still see Scrum Masters as servant leaders. Yeah. People that find joy and satisfaction out of helping other people, making other people prosper, really find energy and so on. One of the things that I've learned as a Scrum Master a long time ago is that at sometimes I was struggling over my relationship with the teams that I was working with, because I didn't really feel a part of the team. They went out, they did fun stuff and so on. They didn't always invite me, and I felt really disappointed, and at points even really emotional. And after a while, I've been through that experience a couple of times, and I just, at some retrospective or something in between, I just threw it out. I said, guys, I want to share something. And then I've learned that no, it's not at all Gunther. And then I've learned, as a Scrum Master, I have 1 foot in the team, 1 foot outside of the team. And that's a natural thing for a Scrum Master. Mm-hmm. And in a way, if they do really great stuff and find energy again, you've done a great job as a Scrum Master, and try to be just happy over that. And that's the annoying thing of a Scrum Master. A lot of organizations or teams will only miss the Scrum Master once he or she is no longer there. Yeah. As long as you're there, you have a very indirect impact, but it can be a really huge impact, but people will not necessarily notice it or attribute it to you. So think about that when thinking about Scrum Master and relationships.
And I don't think it's any different than the relationship with others. I mean, like, building trust, being vulnerable with each other, being doing what you said you're gonna do, helping each other. All of those things are going to contribute to healthy relationships. So it's same. I know we're out of time, Gunther. Thank you so much for those of you that joined. I hope this was valuable for you. It's been recorded, so I'll send a link if you want to share with anybody that couldn't make it. And thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you, Miljan, for the invitation. Thank you for everybody being present. I hope you liked it, maybe got some ideas out of it. So thank you very much for giving us a little bit of your precious time. Thank you.